Meet the Farmer TV is made possible by the generous support of Planet Earth Diversified, Makia Video Productions, and Melli Productions, with additional support from the Blue Light Grill and Raw Bar, working closely with local farms, and Flavor Magazine, serving the Piedmont's local food and wine culture. Previously on Meet the Farmer TV, we visited Sublime All Natural Juice Bar, where they use local produce, wheatgrass, and specially blended custom teas from Dawn Story of New Moon Naturals. Today, she'll take us to her mushroom supplier, Mark Jones, at Sharondale Farm in Cismont, Virginia. He'll show us how he grows mushrooms, his permaculture experiments, a couple of grants he's been working on, and even bioremediation using mushrooms. So Dawn, here we are drinking some of your prototype teas. So we're guinea pigs now, right?
That's right.
So if I start growing horns or, you know, a tail or something,
okay.
Okay, so tell me about these three prototype teas that we're testing here.
Okay, well, one of these is more of a heart tonic, and reishi has many properties. So what I did is I'm sort of playing off some of the many properties of the reishi mushroom. So this one is more of a heart blend. So it has rose petals and rose hips, hawthorn berry, leaf and flower, lemon balm and lemongrass for a little good flavor there. And it's all about the heart, calming the heart shin. And then we have, let's see, this one is the immune tonic. This one has antivirals and antibiotic herbs, some immune tonics, and this one is more of a Zen tea. This one is very calming to the spirit and includes herbs like catnip and kava kava and such.
Wow. Now all of these are using mushrooms that you got right here at Sharondale Farm.
That's correct.
Well, let's bring Mark in and have him tell us about these mushrooms.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello, Mike.
Good to meet you, Mark.
Good to see you.
And tell us about Sharondale Farm. We're here in Cismont, Virginia. And how did you get here and how did you start growing mushrooms?
Well, this has been my family homestead for 5 generations now. My great-great-grandfather built this house after the Civil War, and I have the good fortune to be here now.
So how many hundreds of years is this?
About 140 some years.
140 years. And this piece of land has been in your
my family. Correct.
Wow. Yeah. Has he always grown mushrooms since the Civil War?
No. I became interested in that after college and pursued the wild mushrooms for a long time, and then got into permaculture and urban perennial agriculture. And so after I moved from the city, I moved out here and decided mushrooms would be a good project to incorporate into perennial agriculture and perennial gardening, and that's where I am now. Mostly outdoor experimentation, but I plan to do some more indoor work and grow mushrooms indoors as well.
Wow. Tell us a little bit about what's special about them, how you grow them, how you got interested in them, and whether it's your favorite or anything like that.
Sure. Well, these are all dried mushrooms, and I dry these to store them long term. Everybody's familiar with shiitake. These are grown on oak logs, and we'll see that in a little while outside. The garden giant here is grown on wood waste, primarily wood chips on the ground. The lion's mane is a native mushroom here, and that's grown on oak logs as well, and I also grow that on sawdust indoors. The maitake grows on oak. This is a wild specimen that I found in the side yard on a white oak, and I've cloned that, and we'll experiment with that on some oak logs. This is chicken of the woods. I found that up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I cloned that and have some experiments going on with that. And this is reishi. This is the Chinese ling chi mushroom, a medicinal mushroom that I grow on oak logs.
Now, do you have a lab where you're doing, when you said you cloned the ones that you found?
I have a clean room, yeah. And basically it just it has a high efficiency HEPA filter, which cleans the air up and allows me to do culture work, so I can have single strains in each culture.
Wow.
And I can develop spawn from that. The spawn is the mycelium of the mushroom, the root system, the main body of it, and I grow that into grain or sawdust, and then I can inoculate bulk substrates with that.
Wow.
So
now we have both a dry shiitake and a fresh one here, right?
Yes.
Now this one just harvested a few minutes ago.
Yeah,
right?
this morning.
And then did you dry this yourself?
I did.
And how do you dry these? And I mean, is this the right ratio? This one turns into this?
That's pretty close. This one was probably closer to this size here. And the way I dry the mushrooms is first in the sunlight with the gills up. And what they found recently is that mushrooms are able to convert sunlight to vitamin D through sunlight, like we can with our skin.
Even when they're disconnected?
Even when they're disconnected. This chemical process occurs with UV light. So they're dried in the sunlight for a while, about 6 hours, and then I use a regular food dehydrator to finish the job and get them down to moisture content that will allow them to be stored long term.
Now, what sort of weight ratio? Like, what does this weigh wet, and then what does it weigh dry?
Oh, how much? Mushrooms about 90% water, and I would say these are dried down to about 10%. So
if I buy a pound of dried mushrooms from you, it started out as 10 pounds of fresh harvest.
More or less, yeah.
That's pretty amazing. So there should be a huge price difference in these things.
There is a price difference, yes.
Yeah. That's amazing. Now, can we see your clean room? Can we see the HEPA filter? Can you show some of that?
Sure, I'll be glad to show you.
Okay. So is this a personal investment you're making as you're expanding? And so, you know, as a small grower, you're putting all this money into a special building to grow more of these, just hoping that you're going to sell enough mushrooms to pay for all of that.
That's correct.
All right, so we had the shiitakes. Let's do, now this is the reishi again. Now tell me what's special about this.
This variety grows wild along with some other species. There's one on hemlock that grows, that's a native, and they all have medicinal value. Their beta glucans are what are important medicinally, and they are immunopotentiators. That means they support the immune system. They're good for skin and basically general health, a health tonic.
Wow. Now, where do most of these come from? Are most of them grown locally or wildcrafted, or are they brought in from China, or where does the...
I'm not sure where this strain comes from. It's a commercial strain that I purchased and made spawn and inoculated the logs. And after about 15 months, they started to fruit this last summer. So hopefully over the next several years, they will continue to fruit. There are growers around in the United States that dedicate houses just to growing mushrooms like this and medicinal mushrooms, and then there are one or two companies that create medicinal tinctures that
they're very hard, aren't they?
They are. They're very hard, woody. So they're not edible, but they are medicinal.
So do you need to dry these as well?
I did dry those, and I dried those in the sun, and then basically put them in a refrigerator in a paper bag, and they dried the rest of the way.
Now, when Dawn makes her teas out of these, how does she? Do you process them for her? Does she get these whole and then grind them for her
I
teas?
gave her to these whole, and then she had some difficulty breaking them up. But I took my garden shears and cut them into smaller pieces, and then you were able to use the Vitamix,
Yes.
Vitamixer.
Vitamixer.
Yeah,
right.
to further.
So we're doing some UL life testing on some grinders, I guess.
It sounds that way. Yeah, I haven't seen that process yet.
Right. That's tremendous. So you're actually cultivating these and putting the spawn in. Dead, like you would do a shiitake, where you drill a hole and put the spawn in a plug.
Right.
You have to water them and keep them moist.
When it's dry in the summer, I'll irrigate it a little bit, but
and it's like 18 months from that inoculation.
Yeah, it was about 15 months from the inoculation till when they fruited. It was a good year and a few months.
Now, you mentioned something specifically about hemlock. Is hemlock a particularly good substrate to grow them on? Or?
This is a different species than the one that grows on hemlock. Okay. But you can wildcraft as much of the hemlock species as you like in our mountains here.
Well, there's been a recent outbreak in the last couple of years of the woolly agelid that's killing all the hemlocks.
Correct.
And one of the places that we'll visit in a future episode is in Floyd County, and there are these dying hemlocks. Mm-hmm. So is that something a farmer could do, is bring these hemlock logs to you, or somehow try to capture this loss of of the hemlock trees and turn them into a special reishi substrate.
Right. Just out in the wild on the dead and dying hemlocks, you'll find these mushrooms. So if you are in a place where you can collect private land, or I'm not sure if you need a permit up in the national forest or not, but it's very
Now they
common.
grow right along the side, like shelf mushrooms.
Yeah, they
or
are
on
shelf
the roots?
mushrooms. Yes, they primarily grow on out of the wood.
We've also seen in areas next to those hemlocks, tulip poplar trees and morels coming up, really kind of from the root stock around that. But these would be growing like shelf mushrooms off the side of the
Correct.
trees.
They'd be on the wood. Yeah.
That's great. So really, could you inoculate a dead tree?
It's probably best to inoculate what would be a live dormant tree. Cutting down live dormant tree or taking storm damaged trees. Dead wood usually has other species already starting to break it down, so you have a lot more competition in that wood for the nutrients. And to establish a mushroom like this in a piece of wood that's already degrading with other species is difficult.
So you've got a competition.
You got competition.
So when you're doing this inside, do you like sterilize that sawdust or do something to
Yes.
kill that competition and
Yes.
then put in what you want?
Correct.
Good. So maybe you can show us some of that too.
Sure. Yeah. Like most people are familiar with shiitake. These mushrooms are all dried. This is a dried shiitake mushroom. This is a chicken of the woods that I wildcrafted in the mountains. I found about 30 pounds of that on my birthday a year ago or so.
Wow.
This is the garden giant that I grow on wood chips, and that springs up every year once it's inoculated to your garden. This is the lion's mane, and I grow this on sawdust as well as oak logs. This is a maitake, or hen of the woods. It's a polypore that I found out on an oak tree in the yard, and this is reishi, the Chinese ling chi mushroom. It's also a polypore and a medicinal mushroom. Mushrooms don't photosynthesize, they're heterotrophs. They need external nutrient.
Right.
That's why you find them on dead wood and on the ground or in association with living organisms.
So the concept of them being live, like we think of a basil plant, is really very different.
Yes, they need they need external nutrients, whereas a basil plant creates its own
So they're not
energy.
making sugar from photons.
Correct.
They're actually consuming cellulose or
Yeah, they break down large molecules, and when they live on dead organisms, they break down large organisms like cellulose and hemicellulose and lignin, and for this reason they're excellent at breaking down other large complex carbon molecules, and so some of these are used in bioremediation and cleanup of toxic wastes and
wow.
and lots of research in
So
those
is there an
areas right
oil
now.
spill mushroom that'll clean up oil spills?
There is actually. Paul Stamets out west has done a bunch of research with that, with Battelle Laboratories, as well as I think there's some current research on the oil spill in the Bay Area, where they're using maybe hair mats or something like that with different mushrooms to see if they can absorb surface oil spills on water.
Well, that's interesting. Do you have any other hot new things about bioremediation using fungi instead of giant chemical plants or scrubbers?
One of the current research avenues is with poultry manure, and in many of the southeastern states anyway, there are millions, hundreds of millions of chickens produced, and at least that much manure in terms of pounds. And to remediate this, to protect watersheds is a problem. And so there are some people in Alabama that are working with different mushroom strains to remediate the antibiotics as well as the other coliform bacteria and so forth in the manure in windrows, in large piles.
Wow.
I've been growing food since the late 80s and early 90s when I was in graduate school at LSU and was studying plant pathology.
Wow.
I killed more plants than I grew in that, but I gained an interest for the ecology in agriculture, and and decided growing food is important, and I wanted to pursue that. So when I moved to the West Coast and lived in the big city, I decided urban agriculture was the way to go, and more or less people growing food at home. I've been encouraging people to do that for a long time, to grow food rather than planting a rhododendron, put a blueberry plant in. I mean, this is the shortest distance that your food should travel sometimes.
Right.
So, and then I developed a perennial fruit and fiber and flower garden at my house in Portland, and filled up my yard. And I was back just this last year, and it's really productive and pretty exciting to see that taking off. The fellow that lives there now is really kind of taking care of it and expanding.
So it's a legacy that's continuing on.
I hope so. Yeah, it was kind of in a fringe part of the city, and most people have lawns that aren't too well kept. And I was standing in the backyard one day, and I realized there were birds and insects buzzing everywhere. And I looked down my neighbor's yards this way and that way, and it looked like dead airspace. But over my yard was this great buzzing and living organism in my yard, basically, and that really inspired me to pursue it in more detail and think about the basis for growing ecological gardens. And again, mushrooms are that basis, so we can use them not only for food and medicine, but for soil building, for cleanup of toxins, and many other things that they do that we most of the time are unaware of.
So you went from LSU as a grad student killing and analyzing plants to Oregon and growing plants where plants hadn't been grown, and you were basically, populating an urban dead zone. And now you're here in Virginia at Sharondale Farm, and you're spawning mushrooms in a clean room and getting ready to build a big facility just to produce mushrooms. And you're working with Dawn Story of New Moon Naturals, creating special teas for medicinal healing effects.
Right. Teas and a couple other product lines in the works for value-added mushroom sales.
How about you show us how you do some spawning? And I know that we've got to do some sanitization, and we probably can't go in there, but we'll try to take a look at you through a viewing window. And tell us some about how we've got to protect your clean area, and then show us some of the growing on sawdust or chips or grain that you do in a sanitized media that you then inoculate. And then we want to see this new facility that you're getting ready to build, and some of the logs where the shiitakes are growing right now.
Sure.
Okay, Mark, so here we are in this specially constructed clean room. I've taken my shoes off, but you've let me in with my super clean clothes here. But tell me what you do in this room.
This is where I capture wild strains of mushrooms by using antibiotic media on Petri plates, and take a little bit of the tissue and put it on there, and the antibiotics, and the antibiotic in there suppresses bacterial growth and enhances the mycelial growth of the mushroom. Okay. And then I transfer that away to a different type of media that doesn't have antibiotics in it, and then I get strains like this, and they all look a little different, but these are a couple of different species right here, and from those I inoculate grain, primarily sterilized rye grain, and when the mycelium grows out, it looks like this. So what's going on in here is the mycelium expands on the grain, and then I take the grain and I inoculate sterilized sawdust, sometimes just straight sawdust, but other times supplemented with some sort of bran for nitrogen, nitrogen requirements for the species.
Do things ever go wrong? Does wrong stuff grow, or it dies, or it's too hot or too cold?
I had a contamination outbreak in here earlier this year, and I had to shut it all down, remove everything, clean this up, and then turn it back on and go back to start over. So that's why I store the cultures in test tubes in the refrigerator, so I can go back if I have a calamity like that, come back and restart things.
There's a lot of things for us to look at.
Well, I don't grow any food in this room unless you like rye grain.
Right.
Yeah, most of this is then inoculated into bulk substrates, straw or wood products or farm waste, manures, and then that's where the mushrooms grow.
Okay. So you would find a mushroom that you're interested in, and like extract spores or
no, primarily tissue.
So
yeah.
you look for healthy live tissue.
Correct. Yes.
Bring that here, put it on a petri dish with an antibiotic media, so you're growing the mycelium and not a bacteria.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And then once you're happy with that, move that into this media in the bag that might be a grain or a grain bran or a sawdust.
That's right.
And you have to sanitize all of this stuff?
This is all sterilized, yes. So all the grain and all
like
the sawdust.
Autoclaves and
I have a few stereoclaves that are right outside this door, so I can cook outside and then roll them in here and unload them directly onto the table.
Oh, I see. We got a garage door here.
Well, there's just a flip-up door right here. And you know, since the room, this fan takes in outside air, so there's positive pressure.
Okay.
So there's always air blowing out of the cracks and so forth. So it doesn't suck air back in and contaminants back in.
Just a traditional positive pressure.
Yeah, just a clean room. Yes.
Yeah. Do you do anything to sanitize the air, ultraviolet or electrostatic?
No,
or anything other
that's
than
not necessary.
Just the HEPA filter.
Yeah, this is the 99.9% efficient down to 0.1 microns. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
And this runs continuously?
This is a continuously running, and unless I change out the filters, I'll turn it off for 10 minutes. Yeah, and then I use iodine to sterilize these solid surfaces. I moved away from bleach because it's toxic. I don't want to mess with it.
Right. I wonder if people really realize that when they're buying a little package of mushrooms in the store, all of what went on here to make that happen.
Probably most people don't know the full process.
They just think you went out in the woods, found these things for free, and are charging them $20.
Well, something like that, yeah.
Well, let's take a look at some more of your facility and look at where you're building a special grow room or a grow building.
That's correct.
You call them stereoclaves?
Or autoclaves, yeah.
Autoclaves?
They're
What's the difference between an autoclave and a stereoclave?
I'm not sure there's any difference.
Okay.
I think it's just the verbiage,
all right.
Semantics.
They look like giant pressure cookers.
They are just large pressure cookers. They run on 220. That makes them a little more efficient in terms of the power use. And you know, I can fit around 40 pounds of bulks of grain or sawdust into each one of those. So.
And how long does it take? How long does
the grain cooks for approximately an hour, hour and a half, and the sawdust takes about 4 hours.
Wow.
So, and that's encapsulated in those bags that you saw earlier with the filter patch, so that there can be air exchange as the mushroom metabolizes in there.
Now, once you sterilize these things, you can't open them here. You
no,
put them
I roll these into the lab. They're on this roller here.
Okay.
And they'll just roll directly into the lab, and then they'll come back down to room pressure, and then I can unload them directly onto the laminar flow table.
Right. Well, that's great. All right, so let's see some stuff outside. Some
Sure.
of the logs, and you built this whole clean room just for this. Let's see your plans for building a growing building. Okay, Mark, here we are in the woods. This is your growing area, right? I see some beds, I see logs, pots with logs in them, and a new building. So show us all of what's going on here.
I'll show you some of what's going on here, and there's not a whole lot right now in the wintertime. Primarily they're shiitake logs that you see standing up here, and you'll see a few mushrooms over here that haven't been harvested.
Oh, good. So this
on these logs.
Is this where you got stuff this morning that we were looking at?
Yes. So basically, shiitake is grown on oak logs. I use white oak and red oak and chestnut oak. I prefer the white oak and the red oak because the white oak and the chestnut oak, because there's a lot of this kind of disease pressure on the bark. That's a competitive mushroom on the bark, and what happens when this comes on is it kills the bark and blasts the bark off, and then the log dries out, and it's all over.
Now, do you sterilize these?
No, these are cut when the tree is alive and dormant. When the tree is dormant, it has the sugars.
This time of year,
this time of year is perfect. Before, after the leaves turn colors and before the trees leaf out in the spring is a perfect time. What happens in the fall is that the trees take the sugars from the leaves and store them in the wood, and that's what we're looking for, is a higher sugar content in the wood, and that helps the mushroom establish itself and gives it the nutrition it needs to get going.
Wow. Now this is sort of different than what you do in the lab, because there you're taking sawdust and autoclaving it and sterilizing it.
Correct. And then that sawdust is used to inoculate the logs, and holes are drilled in about every 6 inches like this, and then every couple inches around the diameter, and the holes are plugged with the sawdust with the live organism in it, and then cheese wax is put over the top, and then it takes anywhere from 6 to 12 months to realize a crop from shiitake logs anyway.
Wow, and you've got them all tagged and serialized.
Everyone is labeled. Yeah, in 2005 I inoculated a bunch of logs and did not label them, and I have no idea what's going on there now. I know they produce mushrooms, but I don't know which they are. I have about 6 different varieties of shiitake that I'm experimenting with, see what works the best.
I didn't know. I thought a shiitake was a shiitake. But
no, there are different varieties, and I've found a couple that are wide range strains that perform in temperature ranges broader than some of the others, and they're excellent. They work very well here in Virginia.
Wow. Now, do you train people how to do this? Do you have workshops, or if
I
want
offer
to grow
workshops.
shiitakes, can you provide spawn of some of these special varieties?
I do. I sell spawn, and I would also sell cultures. I also sell logs, and I offer workshops on how to do log inoculation and cultivation, and also garden bed cultivation and wood chips.
Well, that's great.
These are the remnants of a SARE grant that I was awarded this year to look at developing a mushroom as an outdoor crop and optimizing manure waste management for small farms. And I have poultry manure and cow manure that I inoculated with the almond portobello, and trying to figure out a way to grow those out of doors without sterilized substrate, and get a new crop for this part of Virginia.
So we've learned a lot today from Mark Jones here at Sharondale Farm about mushrooms and permaculture and bioremediation using mushrooms. Thank you for joining us for another exciting episode of Meet the Farmer TV. For additional information and extended versions of this program, visit our website, www.meetthefarmer.com. Meet the Farmer TV was made possible by the generous support of Planet Earth Diversified, Melli Video Productions, and Melli Productions, with additional support from the Blue Light Grill and Raw Bar, working closely with local farms, and Flavor Magazine, serving the Piedmont's local food and wine culture.